If you're watching this video, you probably have an HP printer that's just had its drive belt shredded, and you're looking for repair information. Well, I'm going to document the whole procedure. This is the kit that just arrived today, and I'll tell you straight off the bat, I'm a little disappointed in that I think I just wasted $50, and that's the additional cost of this kit as opposed to just buying the drive belt, and I'll show you why here. In the kit, which is accurately described on websites, however, it does kind of play on your fear to get you to buy the kit over just the belt. And here's what exactly the kit includes. The description on the website says a couple key things that made me get the kit, and I was this close to just buying the belt, but I ended up getting the kit just to be safe. Turns out I didn't need to. It says it includes special tools here and calibration material, which I took to mean pre-printed calibration sheets that have to go through the printer to realign after installation and all that. In reality, special tools means a $5 to $10 basic hand driver kit made in Taiwan with absolutely nothing special about it. It just comes with standard screwdriver, socket, and hex bits. Nothing special that you can't get at a dollar store or Walmart for just a few bucks. And the calibration material turned out to be nothing more than a couple feet of semi-gloss paper. Nothing on it, and I have hundreds of feet of this already, so this was not needed whatsoever. Also in the kit, and is needed, but available elsewhere, is non-evaporating synthetic oil. This goes on the rail after install, and this is absolutely nothing special. This is just machine oil. You can buy this at Walmart or any auto store for just a few bucks in a bigger can, bigger squirt bottle. It also includes the actual belt itself, which is the only thing absolutely needed, and this is available separately for under $50. In hindsight, this is all I would have bought. And then it comes with what was described on the website again as detailed step-by-step instructions for belt removal, which I took to mean a custom, nice pre-printed sheet that will show you step-by-step how to actually do this particular job. However, this is nothing more than a PDF of the HP service manual, which is available free to download over the internet, and I already have. I did verify on the computer that that's what this is. There's nothing else on this disk, so this again was duplicated free information. So what I'm going to do now is go through the actual repair, and I'll document everything you need to do it yourself. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start the repair procedures. One thing to note, I did find this also in the bag. It's a T8 Torx bit. Now these will come in some hand driver kits. It just wasn't included in the one that they sent with the kit, so they included this loose. It doesn't change my opinion of the kit. It's not a special part or anything. It's just adding a couple bucks to the cost if you want to buy it yourself. Now I have opened the service manual. This is what came on the CD and what also I had downloaded for free. I'm going to go and find removal and installation. And I'm going to find belt assembly. Now the belt assembly starts with 3 easy steps. Step 1 is remove the carriage assembly, 2 is slide the belt off the attachment, and 3 is remove the pulley to release the belt assembly. Now these are easy. The hard part is step 1, removing the carriage assembly. This is quite involved, and this is going to involve tearing apart most of the printer. This is 11 major steps. The first one is remove the front cover. Refer to 812. Step 1, squeeze each of the 4 attachment clips under the front cover to release the cover from the printer. Carefully pull the bottom of the front cover forwards until you can release it from the attachments, and then unhook the front cover from the 4 attachment points and remove it. Alright, I'm going to start with step 1, squeeze each of the 4 attachment clips. Let's find those. Okay, we are underneath the printer. this is the front cover piece. What I have are three main big plastic attachment blocks. This is the center, this is the right of the printer. Now these are the attachment clips they're talking about. There's one up underneath each one of these plastic blocks, and then I actually have two just hanging out here, not attached to anything. So the instructions are wrong for the 24-inch model. In my case, I actually have three I need to undo, the three that are inside these plastic blocks. And you just push up on the tab bit, and the cover simply pulls forward off. And these other two sitting here don't do a darn thing. Okay, the next step is removing the right cover, and that starts with opening the door, removing the ink. I'm going to go ahead and put those in Ziploc bags for short-term storage. Then we have a series of T15 screws. Those are Torx bit that need to be removed. And then we have a couple clips, and the assembly should slide off. Let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so we got our door. I'm going to pop out all the ink here, put it into short-term storage, and we'll get started on those screws. Okay, this is the rear right of the printer, and we're going to remove the screw in this hole here. There's another smaller one up above. The driver doesn't fit into it. The middle one here, there's another hole here. The middle one is what we're going to remove. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This is underneath the rear, and we're going to go ahead and remove this screw. Next is the little screw inside the tray insert here. And in the front, underneath the front cover that we removed, there is a screw right here in the corner. A little cutout here for your driver to fit into. And underneath the hinge here, we have a screw. And then we have two clips. They're right here on the side of where the inkwells are. And you simply push down on them a little bit, and it will separate the whole assembly. Okay, that's loose. Now we just have to slide the whole thing off. Alright, whole thing's loose. I'm going to put the camera down and just take it off the printer. Alright, the next step in removing the carriage assembly is the left cover removal. We're going to open the door. There's a clip to remove the access cover off the side. And we remove the spring tension arm, then the ink. And let's see, for Z3100, skip to step 12. Alright. Then we use a flat blade screwdriver, unclip a couple more clips. Then the formatter housing comes out. That's where the main computer is stored in the unit. Then we've got a couple Torx screws, a couple more Torx screws, and then a clip just like the right hand assembly, and it should slide off. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on this. Should be pretty simple, just a couple extra steps compared to the right side. Alright, we're going to open the door, and right down here we have a button, and that releases. Oh! Alright, use two hands for that. That was a good catch. Releases the left cover. I'm going to set this down where it's padded Okay, then we have to remove this spring, and we simply carefully take it off the mounts. And then we have to remove these 3 Torx screws, and that removes the media lever. Okay, the screws are off, so now we just slide the lever out. Now we pull out the ink, and again I'm going to put these in plastic bags. Okay, this is the rear left of the printer where the network port and the computer and everything. Basically what you're doing is removing this plastic sheath off of it. And there are these 2 clips, and all you do, I can't show you because it's a 2-hand job. I've already popped this off. I have to hold the camera. But it's really easy. You just pry this clip out a little bit, just about that far, and at the same time lift up on this tab that holds the Ethernet cable. Just get one side started, do the other, and it just pops right off. Voila. And then going back to the T15 Torx bit, we have 1 screw up here to remove. And now right underneath where we were, another screw in the bottom corner. And then at the rear, we have another series of holes. We want the middle one. 1 more Torx in there. And then swinging back around to the front, underneath the front cover we removed, another Torx with a little cutout for your driver right in here. And 1 last Torx underneath the ink cover. Then lastly, the same types of push clips that will separate the housings. And slide the whole thing off. So now we have the left side naked. Everything looks normal. Boy, my wells there need cleaning or changing or something. Awfully dirty and wet. And we can see the computer systems back here. Lots and lots of cables and wires, and most of these are going to have to be unrouted and clipped off and removed to get that carriage assembly out. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with the process. It's going to be a long one, but certainly not difficult by any means. Okay, the next step is removal of the cutter assembly, and that's done in 2 easy steps. Removing the screw, the end cap itself, and then the assembly slides out. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, the screw we need to remove is right here in the end of the blue piece. And then the cutter assembly simply slides off. You got a little finger hole here. Set it aside. Next we are going to remove the front panel. That's the display and the interface. And looks like we just open the window, pinch a couple plastic clips, tilt it up, remove the cable and the ferrite core, which prevents static, and that's it. It lifts out. Alright, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, now underneath here, along the back, are 2 clips. Let's see if I can show them here in the video. All you do is push in on them, and the whole thing pops and rotates up. Then we have to simply pop this old parallel cable out. A little tough with one hand, but it just wiggles out. Don't fall. Okay, and then just depress this little clip here and slide it out Again, this isn't difficult, it's just hard with one hand. It's very loose. Just don't want it to fall. Come on, get on there. And set that aside. Next up is removal of the top cover, and this is going to be another subsection. Got a series here that needs to be followed. First is removing the window, then the right and left covers, which I believe have already been done. And then we have the rear tray, then the rear cover, then the front panel, which I believe is already done. And then it looks like the actual top cover comes off. So let's go ahead and go through these, starting with removing the window. Okay, removing the window is a multi-step process. We've got open the window, remove 2 screws securing the hinge locking plate, and then lifting that off. Then we remove the dampener rotary and remove more screws for the remaining plates. Those come out, and the other side, and then the window lifts out. Alright, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and it looks like I just figured out why there are some anomalies in this service manual. It's written using the 44-inch, and the 24-inch obviously has different dimensions and callouts. For example, the 44 uses 4 hinges, this 24 only uses 2, and that would explain the difference in the number of front panel clips during step 1 also. It's interesting that I didn't see that note anywhere in there or any callouts to differences between the models in the service manual. And this is what was included with the 24-inch belt. This is the actual file that comes in the kit. I'll have to check my downloaded one to see if that's actually the 24. Maybe I should be following that one. But as long as these differences are the only things, not a big deal. So the first step here is remove the screws here holding the little covers on around the hinges. And then this little piece just lifts off. And underneath it we have this little dampener. Okay, here's the trick to getting this little dampener out. Because it's kind of wedged into the gear here, you can't just pull it straight out because it's cut into the teeth. So take your cover, rotate it forward a little bit, and just lift up as you rotate the cover back. Comes right out. It's just a solid piece of plastic. Now we go and do the remaining one, and we'll lift the cover off. Okay, to take the cover off, all we have to do is grip it by the corners and slide it to the right. That kind of clears the hinges. And then slide it forward and the whole thing should come off. I'm going to try to do it with one hand here, but it might take 2. Slide it to the right. There we go, it's one side. Okay, very easy to do, just not with one hand. Anyway, you can see that it's just a little pin. So you just clear the slot and it lifts right out. Set that aside. And the next step is removing the rear tray. No need to show this. This is a normal user serviceable part. Just take it off the back. Then we have removal of the rear cover, which is simply removing all the torque screws around it, and the cover pulls right off. Let's go ahead and do that. And it looks like we've only got 4 screws here to remove the back, 2 in the upper right hand corners, and then 2 more towards the center. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these off and remove the cover. Alright, all 4 screws are out. Now we should be able to just slide the cover off. And set that aside. And flipping back around to the front, we have the 4 torque screws in the corners of the cover that has to come off. Now on each side there's a couple screws that look like this. Once you take these out, these light gray plastic clips need to be pried out a little bit. They're going to want to lift up with the rest of the cover. And all you have to do is clear this center plastic part. So you just lift this out a little bit and up. So you just lift this out a little bit and up, and you can see it clears that screw post in the center. Do that on both sides, and the whole cover will lift up a little bit, and then we'll clear the cable underneath. Now we have the cover propped up, and you can see the front control panel cable just has a couple routing clips. Just slide it out from the clips and set the panel aside. Next is the removal of the window position sensor. Luckily, most of these steps are already done. Right cover, left cover, front panel, top cover are already out. So we're on to disconnect the window position sensor and remove one T15 Torx screw and then remove it from the printer. Alright, let's go ahead and do it. Okay, up in the upper right hand corner we have the window position sensor, and you simply wiggle the wire out of the connector, and then using your T8 Torx bit, remove the one tiny screw holding it to the unit, and then pull it out and set it aside. Now we have removal of the ink supply tube's support rail. And this is a multi-step process. Luckily most of these are already done. Right cover, left cover, front panel, top cover, window position sensor already gone. So we're going to start at step 6, which is removing the actual tubes from the support rail. Then we have a bunch of Torx screws in the rear. And then we have to unroute a cable using, looks like 3 screws. And then we remove the support screws for the rail itself, and it slides out. Alright, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, the rail that we're talking about is the one in the back. You can see the ink lines that are looped here, and they come from the side. They go along the support rail, which is what we're going to be removing, and then they loop around to the front. This is not what we're touching. We're doing this rear rail. So the first step is to just slide these out of the rail. It's just to get them out of the way. Okay. Then flipping around to the back, we have these on the 24-inch model, 4 brackets. We're going to go ahead and remove these. Next we have to remove these 2 little, I'll call them grounding straps, from the sides here, just like we did the brackets. And the last grounding strap, which is on the end. Then we have 4 more screws to detach, and they're simply holding the assembly to the frame. It's 2 on each side. Go ahead and take those out. Next is simply sliding it out of the printer frame. There is a little alignment nub down here. You simply slide the whole thing to the printer left. If you're working from the back, it's the right. Just slide it out a little bit until that clears. The whole thing drops down, and you simply slide it to clear the frame out of the printer. This takes 2 hands, so I'm going to put the camera down, but it just slides right out the left side of the printer. Now we're almost done with carriage assembly removal. We're on to the encoder strip with spring and attach nut removal. This is a longer process, not hard though. Let's see, the first couple steps are done, so we're on to removing the T15 screw, securing the strip to the printer, then gripping the strip, unlatching the end, undoing a T10 torque screw so we can move the carriage assembly, then pushing the carriage assembly out of the way and undoing the other end, then finally removing the encoder strip. Alright, let's get to it. Alright, the first step is to remove the left retaining screw of the encoder strip. The encoder strip is this plastic band that runs along the length of the printer, and it's got some tick marks on it. I'm assuming the carriage actually reads the tick marks to know where it is or something like that. Anyway, the screw we need to remove is the little tiny guy right here. And once that's out, we're going to bend the strip that it's retaining. Alright, the screw's out, and now we have to pull the strip to the left, and that's going to take tension off the little nubs that it's stuck on, and we're just going to bend it and give it some flex. I need to do it with two hands, so I'm going to put the camera down. This is the back right of the printer, and back here underneath this cable there's a little label, Torx 10 only, counterclockwise to uncap. Inside there's a little plastic screw or bushing, and that's what we need to turn. Unfortunately, if you're able to see inside it all, there's a black plastic collar. It's kind of an assembly, and that's around it, and it's beveled, and it's so small that the driver isn't allowing the Torx bit to go in and make contact. So I'm going to have to figure something out to get this Torx bit down in there. It's a very deep shaft. You can see kind of how deep it is in there. And it's those black plastic pieces, you can see the seam right there, that are preventing the Torx driver from getting in to actually turn the screw. So I'm going to figure something out here. This is the tool that's actually needed for the job. This is a dedicated Torx driver. It's a solid shaft with the tip at the end, so there's no increase in diameter along the tool, so you can get into the right spots. Unfortunately, my tool collection does not include a T10 driver. As you can see, the problem is what's included in the kit is this Torx bit driver. The tip's the right size, but you can see the diameter difference. It's this collar that's actually bumping in the way inside the printer. It needs this thin shaft to actually get this into where it needs to go. So I'm off to Wally World to try and find a T10 driver. I found a tool that worked. My Tech Edition Swiss Army knife had a T10 Torx bit adapter, and the key was this was small enough to get in and not magnetized. The bit is actually still in there, and I was able to push the bit in manually and then put the driver in just enough to catch the shoulder of it so I could actually spin it. Now I just have to get some needle noses or something and pull that bit back out. But the point is, I was able to get it in there just far enough to grab and rotate, and now we can push the carriage assembly freely. And that's what we wanted to do. Wow, okay, that's just nastiness. This video is also now going to include taking care of these inkwells or reservoirs or whatever they're called. They desperately need some attention on both ends. But this right side is just terrible. Oh my god. Like, I don't even want to touch this stuff. And just another note that this experience with the tools reinforces my idea that this kit was a complete waste of money. If I didn't happen to have that driver, would have been more money I would have had to spend. And obviously, whoever put together this kit and included the description that it includes everything you need to do the job has never actually tried to do the job, because it is not true. That brings us to the last step, which is unhooking the encoder strip from the right side, and then carefully pulling it out this way. And I'm going to put the camera down. It's a two-hand job. The whole thing just slides out to the right. Now we're on to the biggest step, which is actually removing the carriage assembly. It starts out with removing the trailing cables. There's a clip in the center that has to be removed. And then we detach the cables from the computer board, and they come off some double-sided tape. We have a couple clips on the side that come off, and the cable then actually comes off the printer. We have to remove the print heads, and then remove the ink supply tubes from the carriage assembly. And then we remove the belt tensioner screw and take off the media lever attachment plate. Disconnect the sensor, unroute some cables, remove the actual side panel, and the carriage assembly will slide out. Let's go ahead and do that. The first step is to remove this little clip in the center of the printer. Just a couple screws holding it on. And over here on the left side, the bottom of the tape is actually held with some double-sided tape. Just gently peel it off the tape. We'll be replacing this tape when we reinstall it. Then here on the side where the two cables actually connect to the PC board, these are easy, no pressure connectors. Just lift up a little bit on the tan part, just slides up a little bit and has a stop. And then the cable simply lifts out. Next we have these two tabs that need to be undone, securing the cable to the printer. And there's an easy little squeeze tab. Just squeeze it in and the whole tab unclips. Do that for both. Now the cable's free, and we can gently unroute it. You can see it's behind a few little clips. And it goes through a little slot. Just gently feed that through. And that's ready to come out. Next we have to remove the print heads. So we open the assembly, and I'm going to be putting all of these in a Ziploc bag, just like I did the ink. Lift up the handles, gently pull them straight up. There we go. Ooh, man, I got a lot of schmutz on that one. I have my cleaning cut out for me. Anyway, go ahead and do the rest of them. Then we have 4 Torx screws here to remove. One up in the corner and 3 down below. Now we can lift off the ink supply tubes. Move this handle out of the way. It's probably going to take 2 hands. And these come straight up. Clear the lid. And I'm just going to kind of lay this back out of the way because the carriage assembly is going to slide out to the left. So just lay this out of the way. Next we close and lock the lid. And over here on the end, you need to loosen this screw. This is the belt tensioner. remove it. And what that is going to do is actually release the belt tensioner. Leave that in place, go down to the right side, and slip the belt off the drive motor. Back on the left-hand side, we need to remove the media attachment bracket. That's this part here, and it's done by removing the two screws that are in the center of it. The service manual is incorrect again on this step. It says they're T15. They are really T8s, and they also require a small shaft driver, either a dedicated T8 driver, which is best, or my Tech Edition Swiss Army knife luckily barely fits through. The bit driver supplied with the kit does not fit this. Next, we remove the pinwheel lift sensor. This is done simply by lifting out the connector. Then we need to unwrap this bundle of cables from the three clips. We have one here, and one here. Now we're ready to actually unscrew the side panel. There are 7 screws to remove. The service manual incorrectly calls them T15s. They are actually T20s. And they are this one here that's connected to the rail bar, the 2 along the bottom, and then the 4 that go up along the side. And with those screws removed, now we can slide the end connector carefully off the printer. Now we're ready to slide the carriage assembly off. And you have to be careful of the belt, which I just have, or not the belt, the ribbon cables, which are dangling off the side here. And this is going to come off with the belt assembly, which is just laying loose in here. So this is obviously going to be a two-hand job, but you just slide this right off the rail and pick up the belt assembly and the ribbon cables as you slide it off. Now, as far as cleaning, this is actually going to be a lot easier than I thought it was going to be at first glance. Basically, there's a few different areas here that need to be wiped up and such. I thought I'd have more to do, but I really don't. This left area where you see the foam pads that collect the ink, this is called the spittoon, and basically you have this gray plastic piece. You just pinch the side in, and with a little bit of resistance it comes up, and it holds the immediate cotton pads on the top that collect ink from the print heads. Then inside you have very large foam pads that will actually collect ink over time. And as you can see, it's almost completely empty, so no need to change that. So we'll just put that back together, snap it down, and I'll just wipe off any little bits of surface dust. I have bits of the old belt hanging around. I'll get all that cleaned out. Lots of bits of it in here. There was a ton of belt residue in here, but I had blown it away with air, not knowing what it was, and I actually spread it all around the printer. So I got to get all that out. You can see bits of it all throughout the printer. It's just pretty much probably 10% of the belt turned to dust and bits and flew everywhere. Now over on the right, we've got 2 areas that need attention. One is the drive motor. Obviously it took the brunt of the belt shredding, and the actual teeth on the motor need to be cleaned out. I'm going to get in there with a little tool, get the teeth nice and clean, then wipe everything off. And then the pads on the right hand side, this is called the service station, and pretty much they're the same thing as the left hand side. They don't need to be touched. You can pop the covers off, and it's the same kind of deal inside. But all I have to do here is wipe off all the surface contamination. There's a lot of built up ink, especially on the right hand side on this black. And I'm going to get in there with cotton swabs and just clean everything up off the surface and make sure that's nice and clean before I go ahead with the reinstall. Now, when I do the reinstall, it's pretty much exactly the same in reverse. And there's just a couple little intermediate steps that I see that I'll touch on and I'll show in the reassembly video. That's what she looks like now in her almost naked state. Alright, I've gone ahead and cleaned everything off really well. I've got all the rubber bits out of the drive motor teeth, just used a knife for that, and I blew the whole thing off with canned air, got rid of all the loose stuff. Then I used some alcohol with paper towels and cotton swabs, cleaned out all the big gunks of ink that were around, and wiped off all the surfaces. Got everything nice and clean. Foam pads were fine. Got everything down on this end. Then what I did is I used the alcohol and paper towels to wipe down the carriage bar. Even though it looked really clean and shiny, tons and tons of ink came off of that. And there were rings of fibers and ink and all that that were pushed from either side of the carriage moving, and cleaned all that off. All in all, a lot of gunk came out of this printer. I also blew off, you can see around the side here, there's a cooling fan for part of the computer. That was very, very dusty. My house is pretty dusty to begin with, and I regularly keep it dusted and blown out, but sticking a can of air in there blew tons of dust everywhere. Also on the other side there was another fan. This one is perfectly clean, so I imagine this is probably an outlet. And then I just made sure I went over everything and got all the rubber belt bits out and blew everything, wiped everything down. So now we're ready to go ahead and continue the installation of the new belt, which is pretty easy to do, and then we'll reassemble the printer. This is the underside of the carriage assembly, and to remove the belt, all we have to do is guide it out of the little tabs, and again, this is easy with two hands. Just feed it out under and over the little teeth. Comes out pretty easily. Anyway, I'll finish that with two hands. I can't get it out without putting the camera down. So that'll remove the actual belt from the carriage assembly. And then what you want to do is wipe it off, use some canned air, blow everything off. There's belt residue all over the thing. There's ink, basically just like the printer was. So clean that off really well. And then here we have the belt tensioner. And all we have to do to remove the belt is compress one of the springs. And then the pulley comes right out of the slot. Look at that. Did it with one hand. And the belt is free. Then you can go ahead and put the new belt in. Start reassembling. The areas you specifically need to clean up on the carriage assembly are the ends here where the shaft goes through. There's little pieces of felt that you want to wipe off. I just used paper towel, and they just had a bunch of ink and stuff sitting on them. And then inside here where there are the contacts for the print heads, clean off all the ink and the splotches and everything, especially off the contacts themselves. You don't have to get them spotless, just make sure there's no big gobs or anything on there. And then I just sprayed down the rest of it with canned air and wiped it down and got it nice and clean. When you put on the new belt, take note of the location of where it actually connects to the carriage assembly. You'll see that the underside of the belt has two different surfaces. One is toothed, and this is for gripping both the carriage assembly and the drive wheel on the motor, and the other is ribbed, and this is for going around the pulley on the tensioner assembly. When you slip it into the carriage assembly, it attaches right at the end of the tooth section. So when you put it in, it goes in the carriage assembly here. This is where the end of this section will go. Right in there. To prep the clean printer, what we need to do is now lubricate the carriage rail, because we have cleaned this off and it's been removed of the film of lubricating oil that was on there from the factory. And all we use is non-evaporating synthetic oil, just regular stuff you find at Walmart or an auto store. And a little bit goes a long way with this. All we're going to be doing is applying a very, very thin film onto the rail just to basically wet the metal. Shouldn't have any drips, shouldn't have any kind of runs. We just want as thin a film as possible. So all we're going to do is put a few drops here. This is just cotton. And if you do end up putting too much on the rails, it's not a big deal. Just take some clean cotton and wipe it back down. It'll take off just enough. Now all we're going to do is run it along the rails to evenly distribute it all the way down. And you'll probably see a little bit of ink and whatnot on the cotton when it comes back up, because this is also going to clean it a bit. You've got a little bit, no big deal. And just go along all edges, all sides of the rail, and get it evenly distributed. You can feel it with your finger, it should be slippery. Actually, I'm going to apply a little bit more oil. Go over it again, just so I have a nice coating on it. But again, you don't want it so it's actually wet, because that will just attract gunk. This is just to lubricate those little felt pads on the carriage assembly, and you want to add a drop to each one of those as well, just so they're not bone dry from when you clean them off. Make sure to get the underside of it. Watch around the ink. It'll tend to pick stuff up here, so kind of hit this section last. See? Alright. Rail's done. On to assembly. When you route the new belt back onto the tensioner assembly, make sure that these slots are facing up as it would be installed in the printer. The mount screw is off center from the two mount shafts, and it only fits on back to the printer one way. So if you have it reversed, there's no danger of it going on in the wrong position, but you'll have to take it off and flip this around. Now at the point of putting the ribbon cable back through the printer, we have to replace that double-sided tape that just held it down to the frame here. So just grab a strip of your favorite double-sided tape, make it as thin as possible, and make sure you've cleaned off this section if you hadn't already done so, to make sure there's no oil or residue. Then I'm going to go ahead and peel the top off, lay the cable back down, and continue with reassembly. And we're all back together. Now the next step, while it's booting up here, as you all know, they take a little time to boot up. The next thing is to run the tests and calibrations that are required after removing certain parts. The last thing you have to do is run a very long series of tests and calibrations. For this particular repair, what you have to follow is the carriage assembly sequence, and that starts with the carriage assembly test, which is very long. And then you do the scan axis test, then the line sensor calibration, then the sensors test, and finally the cutter test. The whole thing takes roughly an hour, and it's literally just standing there pressing a button and watching the display. There's really nothing else to show. That's it. Good luck.